So at It's a Lawyer's Life, and we are celebrating LGBT and History Month. And this month, or this week, we're spotlighting our friend Stephen Lue, who is part of the LGBT community. So we're going to ask Stephen to share his background, his stories, and his views. So welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for wanting to celebrate LGBT History Month.
Absolutely. So we're just going to start off with some very basic questions, Stephen. So how would you, or can you tell us how you prefer to describe your sexuality?
So I think that more of us are somewhere along the Kinsey scale than we admit to ourselves, but I describe myself as a gay man.
Okay, and what do you think are the different terms out there for being gay?
I think that as a society, we've become more sophisticated in terms of describing everything that is not white and heteronormative and male. But if we think about the fact that on BBC4 we have Woman's Hour, and that's a whole show just trying to articulate what it is to have a female experience in a patriarchal society. And so what that symbolizes to me is that we're still coming to terms with trying to understand that experience. So in respect of all the terms out there, whether it be queer or intersex or trans or even Black, I think we're in the infancy of understanding what that means for us as individuals, but also for the wider community. But what's positive is that the fact that the terms exist, it is helpful to people, because for some people, if you don't have a name for their experience, then they feel invisible, and that can be an invalidating experience.
Stephen, we often hear about the gay lifestyle, and I wanted to ask you, does that term have any meaning for you? And if so, what does it mean?
So I used to be racked with this huge sense of self-doubt that I was a massively rubbish gay. I felt like I wasn't out there looking like other gay men, and I wasn't synonymous with a particular type of whiteness. I wasn't going to the right clubs or the right parties. I didn't know the right people. But in the end, in my early 20s, I found an LGBT swimming club called Out to Swim. And they showed me what the best of what it is to be part of a gay community is. And I learned from those experiences what it is to have a purposeful life, whether that's a gay life or not a gay life. And it's a community that's really become a home for me, because whether we're building a community at work or in the relationships that we have, Out to Swim has shown me the impact that you can have on a macro and a micro level as being what really matters in terms of having a sense of purpose. And what Out to Swim is really amazing about is it's a swimming team where you have amazing swimmers, friends, you interact with people from the LGBT community who you would never normally meet, like lesbians who lived through the AIDS epidemic, gay men who survived the AIDS epidemic. Because one of the problems with the LGBT community is that it can be really siloed. Everyone is in their own little ghettos. Whereas the club really allows you to mix with people from different parts of the community. So we have really cool experiences, like we go on ski trips, we obviously go to fantastic swimming competitions, whether they be gay or non-gay competitions. And we really defy stereotypes as to what people expect from a gay athlete. Because for many people, the word athlete and gay are mutually exclusive. And we are able to show up at a competition and not only be fabulous, walking on poolside in our heels sometimes, but actually, once we have our Speedos and our goggles on, we beat everyone, and we do really well. And that can be really affirming. And what I also wanted to tell you about Out to Swim is that I have straight friends and straight family members who say to me, you know, I wish I had a community like Out to Swim, because it's not just about, you know, being there for the good times, like the traveling and the competitions, but when there have been real life challenges for members of the community, whether it be they're being in hospital because they've had cancer, or they've lost their homes, or whatever it is. We show up for each other. We have paid for funerals. We have found people places to live. And it's an example of how much they mean to me and what they've taught me, that Out to Swim are actually one of the beneficiaries of my will. So they have taught me what a gay lifestyle can be.
And Stephen, you've mentioned the word community, and I used it earlier as well, and so did Keely. Is there a sense of community in the sense that you feel you are part of a group and you are somehow different from other groups? Or is there no community, but it's just referred to as a community? It's a bit like saying the Black community, which covers so many different people, or the Asian community. So I just wanted to ask you how you feel about that word.
I can only speak about my experiences of my relationship with that word as it pertains to being LGBT. I have been very lucky, and I have carved out a unique experience in a very open-minded city when you look at the globe as a whole. And so I feel part of a community in a tangible sense, just like when I was a teenager and I was watching Queer as Folk, the American version. I would put that on and I used to think, I want to have friends from different areas of the community with different professions who I can go out with, have life experiences with, go to the gym with, and share the ups and downs of life. I have that. But I would say that not everyone feels that there really is a community, because for some gay men, it feels like London can be a very isolating, superficial, lonely place. Mm-hmm. And I really worry about those people, which is why when I go to events like Black Pride, I really advocate people to join Out to Swim, because it has the best of what the gay community has to offer. It's not just about hanging out with those people who are up for having a good time when the clubs are open. It's about more than that. The relationships are more substantial.
Mm-hmm. So you spoke, Stephen, about the HIV epidemic, and the word on everyone's lips at the moment is it's a sin. Now, I've watched it, and it's definitely probably one of the best series I've ever watched. I don't know if I've been living under a rock, but I didn't realise how bad it was. And what I read a really interesting article on LinkedIn about what a massive part of our history is missing as a result of the views articulated during that time. Obviously, we've moved on a lot, but have you seen It's the Sin? Do you plan on watching it?
I do plan on watching it, and I've not seen it yet. I had a really hardcore case on, and someone said to me, you should watch it when you have space for it, because it really deserves you to be switched on. But my boyfriend has watched it, and he comes at it from a Catholic Caribbean perspective, and he found it very emotive. And one of the strong reactions he had to it was a real sense of waste, the massive waste of talent, human life, the unnecessary suffering, and the ignorance and shame of that time that still lives with us today in many ways. And it was pronounced, I think, because even some of my straight friends messaged me about it, and they spoke about how impactful it was for them. And if I think about how emotive it makes me talking about Out to Swim, if I had seen some of my friends die in those circumstances, it would have been a devastating experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, to know what it has to teach me about the past, but also what it can teach us for how we can evolve in a positive way for the future as a community.
Definitely, but don't watch it when you've got a big case on. Literally, I was laughing one moment and then crying my eyes out 5 minutes later, and then dancing around the living room 5 minutes later. So yeah, just do it when you've got a bit of headspace would be my advice.
Stephen, you're at the bar and you've talked about the past and the future. Have you seen changes in the bar, in the profession, in the legal profession, for LGBT professionals?
So I was called in 2006, and at the time, my mentor said, who was also a family barrister, said that it became okay to be openly gay at the bar about 8 or 9 years prior to 2005. And I think that I exist in a bit of a microcosm for these reasons. I'm at a very diverse, forward-thinking, non-stuffy set of chambers. I practice in central London, where judges are simply nonplussed in the way that perhaps judges outside of London don't come across the same range of diversity. But also I practice in the area of family law. And what's interesting about family law is that I think it probably disproportionately has a higher range of LGBT members of the bar when you compare it to, say, the Chancery Division or other aspects of law. So I know that crime, immigration, they have a fair amount of LGBT barristers as well. And I have a little psycho theory about that LGBT barristers, barristers of colour, they head towards the areas of practice that impact on the human experience because of their own personal experiences, whatever they may be. And to go back to your question, when you look at people who have gone to dizzy heights, like Sir Terence Etherton, who is the most senior openly gay LGBT judge, I would say that trying to apply to being a judge or trying to apply to be a QC, being LGBT is not a barrier. But I'm clear also that this was not the case, because I was once at a talk where a retired member of Blagg, the bar, lesbian and gay group, who was a silk, he was outed by the Daily Mail in the 80s, and he had to step down from being a recorder, and he was never able to become a head of his chambers. And so I would say that because of the increased visibility of LGBT networks at the bar and the organization of members of the profession, homophobia is unfashionable. And an example of the positive steps is that the Inns now all have an LGBT network. But I would say that it requires vigilance, and I would say that discrimination is sometimes extremely subtle, and that we have to be mindful of some of the less obvious types of discrimination that can sometimes take place.
Okay. So Stephen, can you tell us a bit about your path into the law?
So I was quite naive and idealistic when I was 16 and 17. And I was having an experience at my boarding school where I was experiencing a lot of homophobia from my teachers as well as my peers. And it kind of was an experience that made me go within. And I was reading Mandela's autobiography for my history A-level. And I extrapolated the parallels between the discrimination experienced by people of color with discrimination experienced by LGBT people. And I thought, 16, 17, well, if Mandela was a lawyer, if I become a lawyer, then I'll be able to advocate for LGBT rights. And it's one of my goals in life that maybe one day I'll be able to be part of the legislative reform that is so needed, desperately needed in Jamaica and other parts of the Commonwealth if I get the opportunity.
Stephen, do you think that not being from a white middle-class background has made it more challenging for you in regards to your sexuality? And I don't just mean within the profession now, I mean generally.
So the question's layered, because the experience I have had from white middle-class England has basically been, you might achieve things that we don't expect you to achieve, but because you're not white, you'll never be truly middle class. And to me, class is a social construct, race is a social construct. Some people look at me and they say, you're not black. But if they look at my mother, they say, oh, she's Black. But obviously, I'm 50% made up of her, and I identify as Black. So no one can ever tell me that I'm not Black. And so when I've been living my life in the UK as a non-white person, it sometimes strikes me that people say, well, you're not from a white middle-class background, but they automatically assume that I don't come from a middle-class background.
Mm-hmm.
And they become comfortable when they know that I've been to a boarding school that was a private school. They become comfortable when they know I've been to a Russell Group university. And that's about them and their social constructs and the social constructs in which we all live. But what I would say is that as the LGBT community function, in the same way that there is a Maslow hierarchy of needs, we have a hierarchy of rights. And at the top of the pyramid, the people with the most rights are white gay men. And at the bottom of the pyramid are trans people of color. And I fall somewhere within that pyramid, which is why it's really important for me to be a trustee of Out to Swim, which is now a charity, because it's important for me in a predominantly white gay organization that there is a person of color in a leadership role in that organization. And it's also part of the reason why I chose to go for being joint head of the family team at Garden Court, because it's important for there to be people of color in positions of power.
I'm really glad you've mentioned that about the middle class part of it, because even as I was asking the question, it occurred to me that there is an assumption that someone who is not white is not middle class. And that is something that's really interesting to me, because I think it affects people from the South Asian background, as I am. But Stephen, before Keely asks you about your career at Garden Court, I want to remind you of something. I told you I had a story or two about you. It's a nice story, so don't worry. But you and I were against each other some years ago now. I can't remember the details of the case, but I do remember this bit. Some months afterwards, I saw you in the street and you were across the road. You may not remember this. And you could have just waved at me as if to acknowledge that we'd been against each other recently. But you actually came across the street and we had a chat and you asked me how I was. And that struck me, really struck me, because in London, especially in London, we have a profession which really is quite formal, and there isn't that friendliness. There is that you get in smaller places. And I think it's part of your charm, if I can put it that way, that you have that friendliness and that willingness to be more than just a colleague who saw someone in court. Do you understand what I'm trying to sort of get across to you? That really struck me and it stayed with me. And it was many years ago that happened now. So how important do you think that sense of friendship and camaraderie is within the profession? How important is it to you?
Thanks for that memory. I don't remember, but I remember having a good experience with you on that case. What I would say is that it's basically the only game in town, because, you know, I used to work at Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch, and I was a very highly paid email forwarder. But at the end of the day, we could all be doing other stuff that makes more money, but we've chosen this job to help people. And actually, I realized that when we get on and see the humanity in each other, whatever that may be, because we're all at different points of evolution, we actually get better results for our clients. Mm-hmm. And I think that the job is hard enough. We give it our blood, sweat, our tears, our sleepless nights, and, you know, we shift other commitments, personal and otherwise, for the job. And I think that it makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Stephen, I've got, actually, going into that point, a very big thanks to you, actually, because you were pivotal in getting me on the children panel. So Ben, I won't know this, but just when I was applying to be on the children panel, I had to get some experience with contested ICOs, and Stephen took me under his wing and took me to good old Bromley County Pool and got me on it. So I will always be thankful for that as well. So talking a bit, so you're at Garden Court, the lovely Garden Court. Stephen, you've always told us a bit about being there. So did you do your pupillage there?
So Garden Court is a very fancy place to be. And I did not get pupillage at Garden Court. I did my pupillage at Pump Court Chambers, and their head of chambers is a Nigerian silk called Obanasubi QC. So I did pupillage there. I had a great time and I was very grateful to them. And I joined Garden Court in February 2013.
Okay, so we have a lot of young people on a lot of our webinars asking, how do I get pupillage? What is pupillage? Has anyone got any tips? So if you could give any wannabe pupils 3 tips, what would they be?
Well, in fact, I was on a panel for my old law school, which was Inns of Court School of Law, now City Law School. And they had a really in-depth pupillage interview panel session on Monday. And I would suggest, it's open to anyone who's done the bar. So I would suggest going to the City Law School website and basically attending those, which happen once a year. But speaking generally, I would say get a mentor from your inn to assist with your application form. Make sure it's proofread. I would say ask for feedback from your interviews and have your friends interview you. And the main thing is, when you're filling out the form as to why you want to be a barrister, don't say all the things that you think they want to hear. Look yourself in the mirror and identify what you actually have to offer as an individual, because your authentic self is going to be much more attractive and marketable than you trying to be what you think they want.
Stephen, one of the things that worries a lot of people, especially in family law and criminal law, is that there are very few younger people choosing those areas of law. They prefer to go into the more lucrative markets, let's be honest about it. So how would you entice someone who is looking for a particular area of the law to go into? Why come into family?
You know, I have colleagues who make more money than me who said they couldn't do my job. And I would say that there are days in court where I feel like I got paid just to be Stephen Lue. And that's a very rare feeling that you can have from your profession. And I would suggest that there are ways and means of making ends meet. They could become a family lawyer, but nurture their private work in a way that allows them to balance out some legal aid work. They can try and diversify. So I do a bit of court of protection work, and I also do 30% ancillary relief, financial remedies work to try and balance the books. And if you're creative and resourceful, you're going to need to be a bit of an entrepreneur at any stage of your career as a barrister. So you might as well do it in something you actually enjoy.
So Stephen, one thing that worried me when I was applying for a training contract was that I didn't come from a middle class family. I didn't go to a Redbridge University. I got a 2-2. But I had a lot of things on my CV that I thought stood out for me, and that's probably why I got a training contract. But I was told by many employers when I went for interviews that my CV would go straight in the bin because of all those reasons. Do you think that we're coming away from that now, and that employers or chambers, partners at firms look at things other than someone went to Oxford and got a first?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, when I was looking at doing a vacation scheme when I was at King's College London at uni back in 2003-4, I was told those firms, those Magic Circle firms, etc., if you've got a 2-2-2, it is harder, and it would be unfair to say that chambers, when you're just starting in the profession, don't look at those things. But a good organization will only allocate a certain amount of points when they're doing the objective criteria tick off for your academic achievement. they will look at the other aspects of your application form, which, as you say, makes you stand out. And if there are other things on your form which make you exceptional, then that will balance out the academic issues. Because, you know, who you were when you got your 2-2 is not a reflection of what you go on to do. So as an example, I got a 2-2 for my family law module at university, but I won a case in the Court of Appeal this year. I was ranked in Chambers and Partners and Legal 500. So none of those things really mattered in terms of once I got in. So once you get in, you can prove who you are.
And just to confirm that, Stephen, one of the subjects that I took was shipping law, which of course you can understand would be very helpful doing care proceedings. So yeah, what you study doesn't mean that you're going to end up doing that. Now, Stephen, we're coming towards the end of this lovely chat with you. And I want to go back to some work that you do with the Duke of Edinburgh scheme. Again, you work for the youth programme. So tell us a bit about that.
So the Duke of Edinburgh LGBT programme was an amazing programme. Basically, you get to tell your 13, 14, 15-year-old self all the stuff you would have wanted to hear. And we were able to do individual tasks with them to build their confidence, up to doing a public speaking at the end of the programme. But what was really wonderful was that we would sit in a circle at the end of the session. They would put questions into a hat. And one of the questions by one of the African LGBT youths, young people, was happy, ? And he was experiencing a high level of bullying, and he was experiencing homophobia from his family. And he just wanted to know from adult LGBT people, was he ever going to be happy? And another member of the youth group, one of the young people, had attempted suicide during the currency of the program. And so as adult LGBT people who've been through that period of turmoil and insecurity, to be able to tell them they're going to be okay and actually be a living example of that was a big deal for them, but also a big deal for us.
That's amazing. And I know you've touched on it a little bit, Stephen, but can you tell us a bit about Blagg?
Blagg is one of the LGBT groups at the bar. It stands for the Bar, Lesbian and Gay Group. There is also Free Bar, and there is one for solicitors in the city. Interlaw, that's the one. Yeah, Blagg basically is the reason why I'm a barrister. They never gave up on me. They always looked at my application forms and interviewed me. I was very grateful.
And Stephen, you're also on is it the Diversity Role Models group?
Yeah, so Diversity Role Models is a fantastic charity, and they train people up to tell their story in about 5 minutes. And part of the issue with change in respect of homophobia, when it's only looked at through the dimensions of legislative change, is that it doesn't deal with the hearts and minds of people. And so the idea behind Diversity Role Models is being able to go into schools when people are forming cognitively and actually showing them what equal human rights looks like in terms of people's experiences, and having a respect for people from a fundamental age. So the idea is you go into schools, you tell people your story, and they put that into the mix when they are developing as human beings and citizens of our world.
Wow. And finally, Stephen, we've got some light-hearted questions for you. So, Keely, do you want to start with the celebrity question?
So, your fave LGBT celebrity, Stephen?
So he's not like on Strictly Come Dancing or anything, but Peter Tatchell is a bit of a gay celebrity, and I see him as like the Malcolm X of gay rights activists. He does not give a damn, honey. He tried to arrest Robert Mugabe himself, and he was assaulted by the bodyguards, but he does not give two shakes. And I respect that. I love that about him.
And now, Stephen, you're a very dapper looking guy. And I want to ask you how important style is for you personally when you're out of work, and then what you want to represent when you're at work in the way that you dress.
Well, you know what? I was very clear for this interview that I could not be in a suit because I thought Keely will simply mock me. But, I think that it's really important for everyone to own their own style. So I've given up trying to be in fashion or out of fashion. I know what works for me. I know what feels good. And I think that when you feel good in your own clothes and your own accessories, then actually you're at ease around other people and you allow other people to be stepping into their own kind of style, which makes them feel good too.
Brilliant. So we're ending on a stylish note there, Keely.
I like the fun. Thank you so much, Stephen. So hopefully we'll be able to see you in person soon. Yeah, June. Hopefully, yeah, and we all come out and celebrate together.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
That would be lovely. And Stephen, if we see each other in the street again, this time I'm going to cross over and come and say hello to you.
I'm looking forward to it, Rena.
Thank you so much.